welcome to our Sondervous podcast. Yes, and it's good to be back with you all, and we hope that you are enjoying the soon coming spring off and on. It's cold and then warm and then cold again.
Yeah, it was really nice weather here, and then we got a little bit of frost, snow last night. So yeah, it's hard to keep track of the weather and what we're gonna do. But and that's kind of affecting energy levels. It's like, yes, it's springtime and cold again. Let's go snuggle back under the covers. So yeah, but we've been busy. We've been busy. We got a
Yes,
lot of
yes,
stuff.
we've been busy and doing our best to try to keep up the momentum. It seems like sometimes there's a lot more sluggishness during these colder seasons or seasons where things are just a bit more quiet. And we've also been dealing with a lot of sickness. We get better and then we have another round and then it kind of goes its way through the family. So it seems like there's like a struggle, a daily struggle. But yes, we are really happy to be back here. And today we'd like to share something really exciting that we've been working on with you guys. Today, we're going to have two parts of our podcast. And the first bit is to kind of, Vicky and I will go through our own healing journey. We've been talking a lot on this podcast and also personally about our healing journeys, where we've come from, where we are now, and then where we're going. So, Vix and I thought that we'd like to share today a little bit about if we were to go back to the beginning of our healing journeys, what is some advice that we would give ourselves then? As well as what were some of the things that, what would be some of the things that we would have liked to have known at that point? And then also kind of like some tips or some ideas for how to make our healing journey a little bit smoother, something along those lines. Yeah, so that will be the first part of our podcast today. And Vix, do you want to introduce the second part?
So the second part is going to be about what this program is that we created for. Well, I mean, it could be for everybody, but specifically, we are really going to be focusing on survivors of childhood trauma or also relational trauma. So it doesn't just have to have happened in your childhood. It could have happened, in your teens or in your 20s. But it's to do with relational trauma. And I think we call a lot of these survivors that they suffer from CPTSD, right? Like complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Um, so yeah, just kind of talking about both me and Michelle have had different experiences with our healing. We've used different modalities, and we've learned lots of different stuff, and kind of brought together our knowledge from what we've learned from these different programs and different modalities to kind of form what we feel is going to be a really comprehensive program and really needed by survivors of childhood trauma and people in this community.
Yeah, yeah. This is our baby, and it's also something which is really close to our hearts because it's not like we're finished this journey. It's kind of like done and dusted, and now we're moving on and we're experts. Absolutely not. We are still very much, it feels like it some days in the thick of it. I should speak for myself. And I
I'm here as
think
well.
what makes this program or this course that we've created relatable because it's real, it's tangible, it's still happening. We're not speaking from some kind of like place of graduation or where we've reached nirvana or we can kind of look down and impart our wisdom to the masses. Not like that.
Yep.
But for me, that's what I really appreciate. I appreciate sitting next to someone, sitting with someone, saying, "This is what I'm going through." What has that been like for you? And then, you from a similar point can share what you've learned with me. And it's where you kind of meet in a very similar place, maybe from different perspectives or angles. And it's in that place where you meet, where you can kind of have a more holistic, more realistic and grounded picture of what it means to heal. And that for me is so, so valuable. And it makes sense. It feels grounded. It feels honest and real in my body. And so that's one thing I think for Victoria and for myself, what we've learned, still being in it, learning a little bit every day, just being able to share that and to build a community of others who are in a similar place or on that journey, those with a passion for healing and growth and transformation. Yeah, that's, another part, another aspect of this program that we've created, which we'd love to share with you today. Yeah.
I think it's almost kind of when you're talking about it, I'm like, wow, this is what we did for each other, right? Like
Yeah.
this is we came from literally like almost polar opposite views sometimes. And we were like, and this is like over the last 5 years, like this way is right. No, this way is right. And then kind of gradually kind of softened as we I think we matured in our viewpoints of the world and our viewpoints of healing. And I think that's what healing is. When you heal, you start to mature and start to be open to
Mhm.
other people's point of view. And it's not so black and white. And the world isn't doesn't just have to be this way. It's like, oh, there is possibility for me to learn from you and you and you. And that's, I
Mhm.
think, in doing that for each other, we're like, wow, we can like you said expand this community and offer this to other people, and the more people we bring into this kind of dynamic, the healthier it's going to be, and the more we can learn, and then they can heal. It's like this chain reaction, right? So
Yeah.
that's, yeah, that's, I think, what we're like, that's what kind of inspired us, our own healing journey and
Mhm.
experiencing and realizing, oh, we can do this for other people as well. So yeah.
Absolutely. I love that word you used. We softened instead of being like so rigid and hard.
Rigid,
And
yeah.
I think that's kind of, we do have to put boundaries in place, but there can be give and take, and there can be movement, and there can be flow and ebb. So I think when you say like we kind of came out of our very this is the way it is and this is the way it is, and kind of been like, oh, actually there's place for us to meet and kind of, interface. Yeah. So yeah, okay. So I think we've both come up with like three or four things that, looking back, if we were going to sit next to our, like, say, earlier healing selves at the start of our journey, I think for me it started maybe 37,
Mhm.
38, not that long ago, really. It seems like it's
Oh.
ages ago, but actually, when you look at it, it's like, oh, it's just a couple years ago. Um, yeah, so some things that I would like to share with myself. The first thing is, I guess we can just like take turns, go back and forth. I would say to myself, this will be the hardest thing you've ever done, and it'll be worth it. That's what I would like to say to myself because I was not ever expecting that, first, that it would like be a thing, like that going on a healing journey and healing and recovering from trauma, that would be a thing for me. It was just something I kind of stumbled into. And I would like to let myself know this is going to be tough. Like, think about going into childbirth, really. Like, I think physically speaking, that's probably the closest thing I can put to it, other than maybe like having a broken heart and just being, like wanting to end your life sometimes because you're so brokenhearted. Other than that, like your body going into labor when you have to give birth to a child, to new life, the physical pain and torment and anguish and literal like ripping apart feels like of your body, that if someone were to say, yeah, this is the most difficult thing you're going to do in your life and it's going to bring forth new life, you're going to have a baby at the end of this, I would like someone to say that to me about this healing journey, that a part of you is going to die and a part of you is going to come to life. Yeah, that would have been helpful to know at the start in a
Would
kind
you
of,
would you have done it though? You've been like, yes, that's for me, or been like, okay, maybe not then.
I think I would have been like, I can do anything.
I could
Look at everything I've done before. Look at how far I've come. I'm such an amazing, fantastic, amazing person. That's what I would have probably said. But now I've been like, you do not know what you're in for. But now looking back, I could say, yeah, actually, you are strong, you are resilient. Look how far you've come. So maybe there is, in a sense, truth in what I would have said to myself, not in the sense that I thought it would be, but in another sense. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's my first one.
that's awesome. It was something kind of similar for me as well. For me, it was the first one was like be patient. Oh, for me, I'm like, oh, it has to be done, has to be done now. Like, okay, I put in this much work, and there in my head, it's always like return on investment, right? So if I put in this much work, then I need to get this much back, right? And just be patient. Like it took, and when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, it took what, 30 plus years? Because I was probably around the same, 30, oh, I'm trying to, 35, 36 maybe, when, yeah, I've been doing this for almost 5 years. Um, yeah, so it's going to take time, and it took you 30 plus years to get to this state, right? And I just started working out at the gym at the beginning of the year. So same thing, kind of like, I'm like, okay, been going to the gym for 2 weeks now. Let me see those up, no muscles, no. Like, what? Darn it. I've eaten healthy and I've been working out and where are my muscles, right? I've been putting in so much work. And it's like, no, it literally took you 3 years to gain all this weight and to do all that. Like, it's going to take you a certain amount of time for your body to get back to kind of just the regular state it was in before you could actually start to make gains or like see what, what you are going in for.
Mm.
Um, and what I understand about brain development is our brains are what we've wired our brains in a certain way to react to certain things and certain people and certain triggers. We have to rewire our brains, and that does not happen overnight. We are also constantly fighting our previous wiring, right? And it's like this right? And so sometimes it feels like 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, and all over the place, and you're jumping all over the map, and you think you're making really good progress, and then something happens, and then you're back to the beginning again. So it's like you said, not a straight line. It's like woo, all over the place. And so yes, be patient and be patient with yourself and realize that you will, and something that I learned recently about, I don't know if it's a law of attraction or law of the universe, that there is this in growth, there is expansion and contraction. And if you watch like a flower grow, I think if you put it under, they like sped it up and they see when the petals start to open right before it does, it contracts a little bit and then it opens and then it contracts a little bit and it opens. And so healing is like that. Something happens in your life and like everything feels like it's caving in on you. And that's usually right before something new growth happens. And so understanding that it's like this and that when everything feels like it's falling in on you, just wait. Like, I mean, they say calm before the storm, light at the end of the tunnel, all of those analogies, right? But literally, that's how growth happens. And a lot of people give up right when the contraction part, like, oh my goodness, it's everything's not working. Fuck it, I'm gonna just quit. But just going that little bit further, that's when the growth really happens. And that's when you're like, oh, this is all the stuff that I've been building up. And now you're seeing the fruits of it. So yeah,
Mm.
patient
Absolutely.
and wait for that to happen. And almost that's what's supposed to happen. You're making progress when things start to look like they're falling apart. So
Yes.
it's really weird, but that's I guess experience and kind of taught me that. So yeah.
Kind of going back to that contractions, birthing a baby, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
contraction you're pushing you. It seems like you're there
Right?
right
It's
already. Yeah, you're right. Oh, that's so good. Hmm. Okay. My second one is this can feel like a lonely journey, but you won't be alone, or maybe you don't have to be alone. And I think this is something that there is something about being alone and being in a space where it's really just you and your decision and your your destiny almost, where other things in life can be quite influenced or impacted by others around us. And I'm doing this because I need to for my family, for my loved ones, for my parents, for society. This is a journey at the end of the day, which is really going to be, it has to start with you. It doesn't necessarily end with you because you can pass it on to others, but it's got to start with you. And you cannot be looking around at others and saying, well, is someone else going to change first? Or is someone else going to change along with me? Or am I going to have a big, happy, merry group to go on this journey with me? At the end of the day, this is really going to start with you, and you have to step into it with a confidence that I may be on this journey. It may feel like that it's a very lonely journey and that I am on this on my own. And there's a purpose in that. It needs to be something that you're not doing because of anybody or for anybody but yourself. So it can feel very lonely. It can feel very isolating. And then that kind of segues to the next bit, which is, but don't go on this journey thinking that you have to go it alone and that this is only about you and that you have to slug it through and that everyone else is just kind of like gone and you're kind of like this island, because that's also not the complete picture. Yes, you're in it on your own and because you've made a decision to do something for yourself. But then when you're on that journey, you're going to find others who have also made the same decision, and you're going to be like, hey, hi there, hi there. And then at some point, there's going to be a place where you can kind of converge with others and where you can kind of start to say, you've done enough work where there is merit and it's helpful to have others there with you to share what they've learned, to grow a little bit together. It's not like you're going to be hand in hand for the rest of your journey, but people come into our life and they're there for us and we're there for them. And maybe that will just be a season or a phase of your life, and then maybe you'll go on your own again. But I think it's there's two aspects of this journey. Sometimes you will go it alone, and sometimes there will be others with you. So I think it's kind of like finding, for me at least, I needed to find the balance in that. I needed to find that, yes, I'm doing this for myself, and I'm not going to do it because it's going to be like this big, huge, you know, party. And we're just going to be celebrating all the way and be going, it's just not like that. But then at certain points, realizing I do want support. I do need support. There is so much strength and so many blessings and benefits in having others and going with others on this journey. So it's been acknowledging and then managing and kind of balancing those two aspects. What parts am I meant to do on my own, where the buck stops with me? And this is really my own work, and I have to take accountability for my own life. And then in what areas of my life is my healing and growth connected to others? What areas in my life is that relational depth with others a part of me taking this next step in my healing journey? So it's not structured. It's not like it's all set out or like you're ticking off boxes. It's going to be very personal to who we individually are. And as we go along, we're going to kind of gain a sense of what that feels like. This is my own work. I'm going to focus on me. I'm going to focus on what I need to do. And this is the part where I'm going to expand to bring in others into this next phase of my journey. So lonely, isolated, community, peers, it's all part of this
Go for
thing
it.
we call
Yeah.
healing. Yeah, that's the second bit for me.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Mm.
So true. So, so true. Um, yeah. So for me, the second one was it's really important to find the right practitioner, and not the right practitioner, but the right practitioner for you. Because this is something that I think, I'm a coach. And so I'm seeing these kind of conversations more in the coaching space of just because somebody has a diploma, just because somebody has a degree, does not necessarily make them the right practitioner for you. Because, like you said, we're all different, and our healing journeys are so personal to us that even like your best friend who goes, oh, this therapist or this whatever was really good for me. And you go to them, you're like, what? Right? Because your trauma is not the same as their trauma. Your uh, wounds and your healing journey isn't going to look the same as theirs. So who they're choosing to follow, or who they're choosing to guide them, I guess, on their healing journey may not be the right one for you. And I think I fell into kind of almost looking at people's credentials and people's, let me see their track history and this and that. And that was at the beginning. Or even like trying out, oh, this person is trauma informed, therefore I'm going to go with them. This person has religious trauma, our background. Oh, this is going to be perfect for me. And then just working with them or having a couple calls with them, and been like, whoa, what is going on? It didn't, like you said, didn't feel right in my body. And my mind is like, they have all the right credentials. What's wrong with you? And it's just like, it didn't feel right to me. And so for my personal healing journey, it needed to be somebody. And I think, just the kind of person I am, I needed to know that the practitioner I was working with was also doing the work. There was a part of me that felt like like I need to challenge them a little bit because the stuff that they were saying or the stuff that they were suggesting to me, or like the practices that they were suggesting to me, I wanted to know if I do this, I guess it comes back to what results am I going to get? And are you a good example of that? And when I felt that there was some incongruence in that, or maybe they did some personal, they shared a little bit about their life, and I could kind of see that not that they were a perfect person, but that you don't really live what you're telling me, do you? And there was a little bit of that of it's all you can almost tell, like you said, I don't know if your nervous system can tell, or mine can, when somebody is actually living what they practice and what they tell people to do, or if it's just head theory. If it's like, oh yeah, I read this in a book somewhere, and if I got a diploma on this, do you actually live it in your life? And if you don't, there's something about it that I don't know that I can work with you. And
Mm.
so that's what it was for me. I needed somebody who maybe didn't have all the degrees, but who literally I could see on call with her that she was super transparent about what she was going through as well. Like some of the stories I shared with her, and she's like, oh, I'm getting emotional. And then using some tools to calm down herself. And for me, that was beautiful to see. I'm like, okay, so I'm tearing up here, my tissues are over there. But it was really beautiful to see that she actively practiced what she was teaching me and shared some stuff in her own personal life, like when I was sharing things about my husband or my relationships, and she would share some personal stories. And I could see that she was very congruent. And so for me, that is why I worked with her for the past 4 years, because I'm like, this is somebody who is growing with me. And she talks about her coaches and her mentors and her therapist that she talks to after she has her sessions with me. So I'm like, okay, you're actively doing this work in your life. I trust you. I trust that the work that I'm doing, you're also doing. So it means that we're both growing together. I'm not going to outgrow you. So for me,
Mm.
that was really important.
Wow. So somebody that you can trust. And what is that
Yes.
trust on? What is that trust based on? Trust is another word for, well, faith. Faith is um, trust based on evidence. So what evidence, like you were saying, what evidence is there to show me that this is going to work? And are you really living this truly in your own life? Because at the end of the day, I think that a lot of this our trauma has been caused by people who we couldn't trust, by people who were so untrustworthy, and people who could say all the right things and what they were living in their life was the complete opposite. So when you're on a healing journey, you want to get to truth. You want to get to what's honest, what's real, what's going to actually line up in everyday life, not just something that's going to be abstract or ethereal or just kind of like sound really good. And if you see, like you said, you see the person living it day in and day out, then that is incredibly reassuring. And yeah, you can definitely have faith and have trust, put your trust in that person. Yeah. Mm. So beautiful. Mm. Okay, so my third one is my body is good and truthful.
Mm.
That is what I would have liked to have told to my earlier self at the start of this. I didn't realize this, but I had so much shame around my body. And I did not believe what my body was telling me. I did not believe that there was any goodness or truth in it. Almost that it was like a separate part of who I was. Not just my body, but also my femininity, who I was as a woman, my sexuality. All of those things had been so, for lack of a better way of putting it, under so much attack from so many ideologies and so much harmful dogma due to how we were raised in a religious cult. Um, those things which should have been the most beautiful, the most precious, the most valuable, the most sacred about myself. I had to almost divorce myself from all of that because it had been weaponized against me. And so going back to starting to do this work around trauma, it's like your body will send you messages, even our emotions. They're messages, they're messengers telling us when someone treats me this way, when someone says something, when something happens, I'm getting an emotion. This emotion is a messenger of how I'm meant to feel and respond. Oh no, this isn't right. There's fear, there's anger, there's hostility, there's sadness, there's grieving, there's, oh my gosh, I couldn't, first of all, I didn't even know what these things were. And then if I had some sense of what they were, oh no, absolutely not. That's wrong. That's bad. That's untruthful. There's something I cannot trust that. So I would just like constantly, constantly be pushing away all these things that were meant to be, like truthful and honest, telling me something about myself, about my environment, around the people, about my relationships. And I had such a hard time with that in the beginning. And over time, I was finally able to get the memo that my body's good. My body's telling me something about myself. It's meant to protect me. It's meant to, I didn't even know how I could separate myself from my body, but it is me and it's good and it's helpful and it's beautiful and I can trust it. So when I'm feeling a sense, oh, this person, I'm not getting a good vibe off them, that's not because I'm mean or unkind or self-righteous or judgmental. That's because there's something honestly here that I'm meant to be like, I wonder what's this about? Just kind of take a step back and notice. So learning to listen to and respond to my body and trust my body. If I'm feeling a certain way, that's because there's something here. And kind of that process of, and then just learning to really honor my body and love my body. And oh, wow, there's so much, such wealth of goodness and honesty and just all those beautiful, amazing things that we tell our little girls and our little boys that no one ever told me before. Now, as a 41-year-old woman, I'm just reminding myself about my body and how I can trust myself. And yeah, so I would have liked to have known that at the beginning, that I can trust my body, trust what it's telling me, and that there is such a wealth of knowledge and information. And if I'm willing and able and I learn to tap into that, that's going to be one of the key resources that is going to help me on this healing journey for the rest of my life. Yeah, so that's the third one for me.
Yeah, that's really interesting as well because I went through probably a 3 month period with my therapist where it was just like so much body-based stuff and yeah, learning to trust your body because I mean there's also the fact that we have trauma and the opposite, the flip side of it where sometimes the messages that we're getting and the emotions that we're getting, they could also not be wrong, but they could be, tied into our trauma. And so they're a little
Mhm.
bit mistaken or faulty, right? But either way, we still have to be curious about where is that coming from and is that right? And obviously that's like the second step when we start going into our heads and looking at evidence. But yeah, I think starting from that, and especially I think trauma survivors were all like when you talk about how could I be separate from my body? Well, that's dissociation, right? We had to do that to keep ourselves safe. So yeah, and
Right,
it's so
right.
tapping back into our body, which feels so unsafe at times, right? So yeah, such a huge part of the work, I think.
Mhm.
The third one, right? Focus on building up your resources. So I think going into this right at the beginning, one of the first things I said was, how am I going to do this? How am I going to live my day-to-day life? Am I going to be this basket case because I'm going 2 hours into therapy and crying and unpacking all my trauma? And then I'm just going to be basically, I've unpacked all my luggage all over, and it's like all over the living room floor. And then my kids come in and go, "Hey, mom, when's dinner?" And I'm like sitting there, figuratively sitting there with all my stuff, just right, all the garbage everywhere, right? So I'm like, how the hell am I gonna still manage to function as a wife, as a mom, as somebody who's working with other kids and just be a productive member of society when I'm doing this work? And it was something I didn't realize. And I was like, am I going to have to compartmentalize, which is like, feels almost like fake. I have to have this box that I put everything into. And ironically, that was one of the resources that I learned, having a container. That's why I think we call it a healing container, because it is literally like having this safe place, this safe box, for lack of a better word, in order to unpack all this stuff. And even though we're not completely separate from our lives, we do have the ability and the resources to to pack up our suitcase again. It's going to be a little messy and take time, but as we get better at it, we're going to be like, okay, whoops, mess all over the floor. Okay, pack up. It's going to take me 5 minutes. Oh, center yourself, get back into back into your everyday life and carry on with your life. It
Mm,
doesn't have to be this, huge mess that you're just, spreading over everybody around you. And I think that was my greatest fear of how is this going to affect my kids and my husband and my marriage and my work, everything I do? Is it just going to be a complete mess because I can't control or maintain all my baggage?
mm,
And that's one of the things that actually was really comforting when I talked with my therapist, probably about 3 years into it. And I asked her, like, and one of the things I guess she, was kind of almost like not a praise session exactly, but she was telling me like all of these things that I'd done really well, and it was so nice to hear a gold star for myself. But one of the things that she said was that when I first started working with you, one of the things that I noticed in our first couple sessions was that you had a lot of internal natural resources. And I was like, what is that? And she's just like, your ability to soothe yourself. Like you could go into a really, really like super emotional place, but then I could see you would naturally kind of self-soothe or naturally kind of, and obviously some of them are healthy, some of them are a little bit more unhealthy, kind of dissociate a little bit and calm yourself down and then be able to talk again. But she's like, you had a lot of natural resources that I already saw you bringing in. Obviously, I taught you more, but you already started off with a good amount of them. So I knew that you could do this work without becoming re traumatized. And obviously, she's super, super intuitive and would check in with me a lot. But knowing that I already had some of those resources, and I think us trauma survivors, we have to have them. We build up our natural reserves of them. Just having to go out into the world and being super emotional, like moms, dry your tears and get on with it, right? That's a part of resourcing.
mm,
Um, but also learning healthier ones, slightly healthier ones. So, yes, suppressing, distracting, binge eating, all that stuff, those are all resources, but they're not necessarily healthy. But sometimes they are going to be helpful. Other times, you're going to learn to deep breathe. You're going to learn to lean on family and friends. I wrote here, like, using self-care habits that already bring you a lot of joy. So that's one of the things she always said at the end of our super emotional session. She's like, any classes you have today, any whatever, cancel them. Today is a self-care day for you. And I literally would sleep on the sofa for 2 hours. I'd wake up, I'd make myself some nice food, I'd watch some cartoons. Like, it was like literally I was a little child again. And yeah, I think I tapped into a lot of that. And she said like using like kind of silliness and playfulness as well is also super healing. Other things like exercise, art, music, anything that brings you joy. And I think, as you know, when we're living in this survival state, it's just like, you just notice all the bad things about the world, right? All the triggers. And then there's also the concept of glimmers, like looking for those little things that make you happy, the sunset, the dinner smelling nice, the fridge full of food, the cuddling with your dog, so just looking for those little things and starting to build them up, building up your resource bank, I call it, right? And that also is going to be super, super essential to doing this work because, like you said, it's so hard and so heavy that you need to have some kind of escape, not in a bad way, but escape to kind of help you forget or help you remember that that's not all there is. Like there's so many good things about your life as well.
yes.
And otherwise, it just feels like, ugh, you're just exhausted. Like this is never ending. And then you go back into your everyday life and it's just like more problems, right? You need to really focus on the good things in your life and the glimmer and things that make you happy and the playfulness and actually incorporating more of that into your life because as you go deeper and deeper down the spiral or up the spiral or whatever it is, it's gonna feel so heavy at times and you're gonna need that almost like a vacation from all of that work you're doing. So that
Yeah.
for me was super important.
Mm, building your resources. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. um, so important and something that we kind of take for granted or we're not intentional about because we just think we're just going to get on with it. But like for everything in life, we need resources for everything. Like even if you're going to make a meal, you have to make sure that either you have things in your refrigerator or you have something in your pantry or you're going to have to run out and get something, right? So it's just, it's common sense that when you're doing work, especially when you're going to produce something which is, well, it's going to be a healed you. It's going to be a better version of you and, a more holistic, more whole, more integrated person. It takes resources for that to happen. So, yeah, absolutely. Having those resources. So good. Yeah. Okay. So I've got one more. I wrote down one here, but I actually thought to change it. And this one, it may be kind of a little bit big, deep, serious, startling, but I think this for me was one of the biggest, keyest, most crucial, and cataclysmic moments for me when I realized that there's a name for the harm that other people have caused us, which is, the result of that is trauma. And that's what we're doing here. We're healing from childhood trauma or relational trauma or, the wounds that have happened in our lives caused by someone or something is normally going to be happen with a person or persons because all trauma happens in relationship. It doesn't, no man is an island. These things don't happen in a vacuum. And then all trauma is also healed in relationships. So there's a name for the harm that other people have done to us and the trauma that we cause. And that's when you actually put a word to it, it's evil. And for me, the first time someone heard my story and they were engaging it, and they said to me, Michelle, that is evil. And it's such a strong, heavy, like it's a word that we don't use, in a meaningful way other than, oh, these are the bad guys. They're doing something evil, in some kind of comic or, superhero story. But if you actually think about the reason why I've suffered this deep wound is because someone or someone's hurt me, and what they did was evil, and that harmed me, and it traumatized me, and I've carried that trauma my entire life. The truth of that, and in acknowledging that, is that it wasn't my fault. It wasn't something that just haphazardly happened. It wasn't an accident. Something happened intentionally. And then you have to do the work of understanding how it happened, why it happened, what were the circumstances surrounding that very, very impactful, life-changing moment in your life. That is part of the work of healing. But naming it is so important for me, hearing that for the first time in my life. And that means that as a 5-year-old or as a 7-year-old or as a teenager or a young woman, that wasn't because I did something wrong. There was nothing inherently wrong with me. I wasn't a bad person. What they did was wrong, and that hurt me. And having that spoken over me it changed everything for me because we carry that unsaid, unspoken guilt and that shame. And I think until we acknowledge that, no, it wasn't because of me, but that responsibility lies with somebody else, not with me, that then is so freeing. It allows you then to do the work that you need to do and to focus on what are the areas in my life that I am responsible for, that I am accountable for. But as long as you're carrying the weight that doesn't belong on your shoulders, but that somebody else's, there's no way you can start to do your own work. So that for me was huge, understanding that there's a name for that and to speak truth to power, to say it, to name it. We try so hard sometimes to dance around the issue or even I think to the point of gaslighting ourselves, making excuses for, oh, but that's just the way it was. That was just the generation that I was brought up in. All parents were doing it at that time, or all my other classmates were doing it. And we kind of create these narratives which poo-poo our own experiences so that there's no depth, there's no meaning, there's no purpose in why we suffered the way we suffered. So I think calling a spade, speaking the truth, and having language and terminology and concepts and language around healing is so helpful for us as survivors of trauma. That is one thing that if I were to say to my earlier self, no, that wasn't on you. What those people did that was evil, that was wrong, that had nothing to do with you. It is not your fault. You never deserve to be treated that way. Yeah, because it was very hard coming to that point. But when someone finally said it, it changed everything for me. So yeah, that is the last thing I'd like to say to myself.
Yeah. Oh, I think that's so important. We don't, those are the people we looked up to. Those are the people who are responsible for our survival. So either, yeah, like, Gabor Mate says, what are you gonna, what's uh, in the survival of a child, what's more helpful for them to think that my caregiver who loves me and who brought me into the world or is designed to keep me safe is hurting me, or I'm a bad person and I guess I deserve this. And so much,
Exactly.
so many of us just like grow up with this, oh, it's my fault. Yeah, of course it's my fault. Or like they can't possibly be wrong. It's on me. So yeah, just
Mhm.
learning to switch that in adulthood. I think it's just it's so powerful. Yeah, and like you said, it frees us up to be like, okay, so that's yours, and that's yours. Oh, and this is mine,
Yeah.
and it's the when this is mine. I mean, this is all I'm responsible for, but I am responsible for it. So yeah, so powerful.
Yes,
My fourth one is, oh, this is so funny. Uh, be prepared to slow way down and go into hermit mode. And this may not be for other people, but for me, this is what happened. That I was, like I said, it's just, I think both of us were both like, independent women, go, go, go. We've been like that since what? We were 12 years old and we were working to help support our family. And we just, we've always been the capable ones. And then all of a sudden we're going into healing, and we were just talking about it right before we started our call. Oh, just tired. um, and kind of at the time that I started this healing, I kind of around the time I was starting my business, that I was like, okay, this is all new and I'm brand new to this. So it means I've got to wear all these hats and do all these things and all these things I've never done before. And so I was trying to literally, when I talked about these kind of three stages of performance, which is recovery, strengthening, and then peak performance. And I was thinking, oh, this is going to be my performance year. I'm going to be getting a whole bunch of clients. And then at the same time, trying to do healing. So it was like literally pulling me of, you need to slow down. You need to heal. You need to be gentle with yourself. No, be out there, be showing everybody your face, be getting clients. And I'm just like, whew, the first probably year and a half, it was me doing that. And I was like, what's happening? I just felt so exhausted. And until I finally realized, until I learned that in healing, look at anybody, you injure yourself. We've been injured, right? We've been carrying our injury for 30 plus years. When you start to heal, you will have to stop, not completely, but all these things that you're trying to zoom ahead and make a whole bunch of money or start a business or, whatever, that's in complete opposition to what your body is actually telling you you need. And usually, you know, we are going. I think most people, when we're going so fast, we're trying to keep ourselves busy. We're trying to distract ourselves so we don't have to slow down and do the healing. Because once we slow down and do the healing, boom, our whole suitcase with all our baggage comes undone, and
oh
it just,
yeah.
we don't want anyone to see that. So we just, okay, let's hide that away and not look at that, and we're just going to keep going forward. So healing season is slow. And my therapist talks about like the different. She goes, look at nature. When she talks about like winter, what season are you in right now? You're in winter season. Okay, things are like dark and deep, and you're hibernating in your cave, and there's not much food out there. There's not many resources. So take the time for you, for your family. Other times it's going to be spring and summer, and there's new possibilities happening. You're going out into the world, and as women, I think this is even more important because our bodies were not like men. Men have the 24-hour cycle. We've got the 24 or 28-day cycle. So for us, it's even slower. And so I think really understanding that there are different seasons of life, and healing season, when you go into this, expect to your body's going to be tired. And it was actually something interesting. I was like, why am I so exhausted after these sessions? Like, I literally feel like I did a workout. I was like I have to change my clothes. I'm like, I'm sweating. I am like, it obviously my face was like all puffy from crying. But later on, I think I just watched a couple days ago when it's talking about when you do any kind of brain work, it's using up something like 20% of your body's total energy just learning new things because the brain's firing. Oh, he did like a huge graph. I didn't understand all the words, but he's like, your brain is taking up 20% of your body's energy learning new things. And when you're processing things and you're literally having these somatic reactions in your body, it's even more like literally you are doing a workout.
Mm,
And so afterwards, you're going to have to be gentle. You're going to have to feed yourself good food. You're going to have to take naps. You're going to have to really take care of yourself because it's literally like you've done a workout. And anybody who does workouts know you have to take rest days. You can't just go day after day after day because your body will burn out.
yeah.
So, also understanding that going into hermit mode and prioritizing the people that are close to you, like
Mhm.
your family, obviously your immediate family, and you don't have to be going out into the world and making friends and going to every single function there is. Like prioritize the one or two people. Obviously, you don't want to cut everybody off because that's not we talk about that's not healthy either. Prioritize the people who are going to make that journey easier for you, and you don't have to feel guilty. Like the priority is you now.
Mm,
Once you heal, you're going to be better for your family. You're going to be better for your friends rather than giving them half of you, why not give them more? But in order to give them that, you need to take time for yourself.
mm,
And so almost I talked to you about courtesy calls, right? Courtesy calls. Hey, I'm kind of going into a stage where I'm in my healing stage right now, and I'm going to be spending a lot more time probably not going out. I'm not going to functions, not going to parties and stuff because I'm really focusing on me right now and letting your friends know. And so they can in on you, right? They can check in on you. You can also check in on them, but also not feeling guilty that I'm all of a sudden my friends aren't calling me up and I'm not, kind of feeling that FOMO that we get, that's actually part of it. And that's when you feel that's probably a healthy thing, right? And we kind of
mm,
need to sit with that and be like, why am I feeling like um, I'm being left out of everything, right? And it's kind of what you talked about. It's okay to prioritize ourselves and that we don't need to feel guilty about finally making time for ourselves, even if it means people around us start to drop off. The important people will stay. So I think that
yeah.
that's also really important.
Yeah. Knowing what times are good just for ourselves, for you just to be with you, to learn to love you, love and like yourself without any other attachments. And then the times that you can kind of step out, you feel like you have a bit more bandwidth to include others into your circle and then make the most of those times. But just being able to kind of judge wisely about, have discernment about when and where and what's best for you. Yeah, such an important part of learning who you're going to be on this journey. Yeah. Hmm. Yes, those have been some really, really helpful tips. We should put those together and just kind of like bullet point them with,
Yeah.
with some helpful pointers there. Yeah. All right. Well, so the next part of our podcast today is going to be introducing um, PLIT-TC Initiative. So this is something that Vicky and I have founded together. PLIT-TC Initiative stands for Peer-Led Integrative Therapeutic Trauma Care Initiative. It's a mouthful, but we wanted to kind of encapsulate what it is we're trying to do here. So peer-led means that we're building a community. It is a group of people, much like ourselves, who are on a healing journey. So we've kind of acknowledged and identified something's not quite right in our life. There was some damage. We've been through some very painful, not just traumatic events, but those traumatic events have led to trauma in our lives. We've been wounded. We're carrying, like Vicky said, we've been carrying this wound for 30 some years, through childhood, our adolescence, teenage years, going into, being young women, getting married, having children, then kind of seeing our carefully constructed world like crumble before our eyes, and then reaching a point where we've been like in so much pain where we've realized something's not quite right here. And then if we want our future to look different than our past, we're going to have to do something different. So what is this thing that we call trauma? It's a wound. And that's caused by something that we've suffered in childhood, not having the resources, not having the relationships, not having what we need in order to process those difficult experiences in our life, which means that we've developed coping mechanisms and strategies which worked for us back then to keep us safe, to help us survive, to help us, just get through life. But at this point in our life, acting as if we're still stuck in the past is not helping us in the present. And it's certainly not going to help us in the future to live, fully whole, thriving, beautiful, actualized lives. So it's kind of at this point where we realized something's got to change, where we started taking steps, not knowing this was going to be a thing for us. This was going to, set us up, I think, for the rest of our lives, right? Like
Mhm.
we said, it's,
Oh, for
it's
sure.
a choice that we've made to continue because it doesn't ever end. We go through one iteration, we learn things, we learn new skills, we learn more about ourselves, and then we kind of say, okay, level me up, get me ready for the next circuit, which is really beautiful, really empowering. It feels like we're reclaiming back our lives little by little, and it's a lifelong journey. So we've met others like ourselves on this journey, and some people have stayed with us. Some people over time we've maybe kind of gone on separate paths from, but our dream and our hope is to build a community of people who see healing as something that we want to do, something that we're passionate about, something that we deserve, um, and to support each other while we're on this journey together. So that's what it means, to be peer led, through the dynamic of others who have been on their own learning journeys and their own experiences. When we come together, we have so much more to share, so much more to give. We can see things from different perspectives. We can build the resource of our shared life experiences. So that's what it kind of means in a very roundabout way to be peer led. So we're not like having any sort of experts. No one's above anybody else. No one's kind of like a guru or has all the answers. We're each bringing our own life experiences, our own, revelations, things that have worked for us. We're sharing with each other. Yeah, to just kind of create a shared resource and space and platform where we can journey together. So that's kind of the peer-led bit. And then the integrative therapeutic. I'll let you handle this one. What does that kind of mean, Vicky? That bit.
Integrative therapeutic. Well, we talk about, obviously we're not therapists, but having a therapeutic relationship with somebody, it's therapeutic just means healing, right? In a before we put all the letters by our names, therapy just means healing, doing something that helps you heal, right? So I always come back to this, right? 30, 40 years ago, how did people, okay, we're going back even further. We didn't have therapists. We had, normally you had like some wise woman or some wise man in a tribe, but the reason that people went to them was because of their lived experience, right? So that usually they were the oldest person in the tribe, and they were in touch with, you know, nature. They were in touch with, they listened to people. And so having a therapeutic relationship, I think it's just being able to be in connection with somebody. And I read this, I can't quite remember what the words were, but the therapist or the person who is in the therapeutic role doesn't heal. That's not their responsibility. It's them being there that causes the healing, right?
Mm,
And like I said, for one person it may cause healing, for another person maybe it doesn't, right? So but everybody's different. That's why having a peer with so many different people, so many different experiences, it's going to work on different levels for different people. And so I think that's what the therapeutic relationship means. It doesn't mean you have to be a therapist, but it means that your presence there, your connection with somebody else is healing. It brings about healing in their life, and a lot of times in your life as well.
yes, yeah.
Um, and the integrative part, I'm a little bit confused about that actually.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
Well, I think it kind of means that we're taking different schools of thought. That, there are many different counseling theories and from people like Carl Jung, people like Sigmund Freud, can't say his name, or Carl Rogers. So we're taking some of these different schools of thought, some of these different frameworks, and we're saying, okay, when we're trying to understand about who we are, what goes wrong in life, how we can kind of heal and grow, how we can self-actualize, what are some of the different schools of thoughts that help us understand how we can do that? So the two, actually, we're using three that really we're drawing a lot from is, well, person-centered therapy by Carl Rogers. And he believed that essentially, um, in order, when we're in a therapeutic relationship, we just need to offer three core conditions to the other person, whether that's as a counselor or a client, or even in a relationship, between friends or between peers. What do we need to offer? The first one is unconditional positive regard. So that is just acceptance, to just accept another person for who they are, even if we disagree with them, or even if, we don't see eye to eye. You could say, I accept them as a person, just as I want to be accepted, I will accept you. Another one is, empathy. So empathy is just understanding, being able to understand, wow, this person is really going through something. You may not be going through it yourself, but you can have understanding that it's a difficult situation to be in. You can step into their framework. You can kind of have a sense of the difficulty or the happiness or the sadness or the loss or the grief that they're going through. And that shared understanding is what brings you closer. And like what you said, is one of the key ingredients to therapeutic growth and change. And the last one is congruence. So congruence is being genuine, being honest, just noticing like what you just said. I'm not really sure about this. I'm a bit confused about that. That is congruence. It's not saying, well, I think that it's blah 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 blah, or it should be. It's just being like, yeah, I don't know that, or actually I've noticed something about that. So it's, if we're honest and genuine within ourselves, then we can offer that to others. So we're taking Carl Rogers' person-centered therapy. Another thing we're drawing from is narrative therapy, learning to work with our stories, right? We each have a story. We each have a way of making meaning, making sense of what we've been through, what we've come through in life, and then trying to understand, well, why am I here? Where am I going? What is my meaning and purpose in life? How am I meant to live my life? And what is my, higher calling or purpose? We all need, but I think it's helpful to have some sense of meaning and purpose and calling in life. So using our stories to help understand where we've come from, where we are, and then also where we want to go. Another one is attachment theory, understanding that we have each developed certain type of attachment. So that's like the way that we relate and connect to other people. Normally starts off in childhood, what were those formative relations like with either a mother or father or caregiver? Understanding that we each have formed a certain style of relating to each other, which feels familiar, which feels normal, comfortable for us, whether or not that's healthy and it's helping us to have our needs met in a healthy way or maybe an unhealthy way. It's understanding that why and how we relate to each other. So we could have a secure attachment or an insecure attachment, and it's helping us understand how we form these attachments and kind of moving us towards learning different things about ourselves and others that can help us move toward having a more secure and healthy attachment with, the people in our lives who are important to us. So I think those are three. Another thing is the emotions education, which is what you're bringing. So you
That's
can.
yes, that's where I really love focusing on because, like you said, and I think this is why our work is really complements each other because one of the things that we noticed in our own journeys is that when we started talking about our own stories, which you're going to do in talk therapy, right? All these emotions come up, right?
Mm.
You're just talking about all these things unless you're completely well. Um, Either we have emotions or we can actually talk about our experiences in a really calm, numb way, which is also pretty unnatural if you're talking about something traumatic that happened, right? And there are some people who are just able to do that, tell a super traumatic experience and kind of laugh about it. And you're like, whoa, that's kind of weird, right? And so either with feeling numb, and that's like when you're far, far end of the spectrum, you've almost dissociated from the actual experience. And when you start getting back into feeling things in your body, you're gonna, all those natural emotions that you should have probably maybe did feel back then come back into your body because you're mind doesn't know the difference between now and in the past. And so, what do you do with all these emotions? Because they're like a wave, they come up and you're drowning as you're trying to talk about these things, right? But in order to do the story work and to process and to figure out where you are, you need to be able to stay in the boat and not be drowning in the water.
Right.
Otherwise, you are stuck. And so that's where the work that I do comes in, where learning about our emotions, like you said, having a name for all these things that come up and being, whoa, what is that? Having understanding, you can have two separate emotions at once. You can have blended emotions. You can have uh, emotions that are bittersweet, right? You're angry and you're happy at the same time, or you're jealous and you're happy at the same time. And
Mm.
understand emotions are such a complex part of our story. But once we understand them and the results that they have in your body, the feelings and the sensations. And so, first being able to recognize them, but then also knowing how to handle them and to soothe them, right? And then, obviously, we have these core emotions, but because so many of us are taught they're not safe, you shouldn't be showing them, that we develop unhealthy suppression of them, right? So that's where a lot of anxiety comes in, right? I'm feeling this, but I shouldn't be feeling it, so I'm going to feel anxiety instead. Or we feel a lot of shame about having these core emotions. Or we go to the completely opposite end of the spectrum where we use coping mechanisms, alcohol, drugs, sex, addictions to numb the anxiety or the shame that we're feeling because we can't feel the core emotions. So that is what also one of the things I teach is the on the change triangle, and that was from Hilary Jacobs Hendel. So she taught, I think she developed the change triangle, and it's just a really simple model that people can follow in their journey with emotions of, ooh, where am I and what's going on here and how can I get back to feeling the core emotions, because the saying goes, feel it to heal it. When we can
Right.
feel the core emotions, we can begin to process them, we can begin
Mm.
to talk about them, we tell ourselves a story, hey, it's natural to feel this, or it wasn't your fault, right? We
Mm.
start to use some of the story work to incorporate our emotions,
Right.
and we get back to this place of feelings like calm, connected, compassionate, curious, all those things that we're talking about polyvagal theory. So we're back in the ventral state. So, yes, doing emotions work is a super important part of healing. And I
Mm.
think that's also one of the resources that I talk about, that understanding and having these tools is a big part of being able to do this work and not breaking down halfway and just I can't go any further because I keep
Right.
getting overwhelmed. Right.
Right,
So
right. Yes, and that's kind of one aspect of this program that we've created where we ourselves we faced a lot of challenges in those areas like, oh my gosh, this is like too much, it's too overwhelming. And I think, looking back, if we would have had that kind of the more psychoeducational part of it, where we're able to kind of learn about, oh, okay, this is what emotions are. This is how it, feels in my body. These are the sensations. When you have a framework and you have the concepts and the knowledge about it, first of all, you know that you can work with them. It's not something to be afraid of. It's not something to be ashamed of. You don't have to suppress it. It's normal, it's natural, and it's so helpful to have that understanding because then that allows you to then do the work of healing from the trauma. So kind of those two aspects come together really nicely. I would say essentially you have to have both of those parts of the puzzle in order to create the picture, which is, healing, growth, change. Yeah. So going back to the integrative therapeutic, the different modalities that we're drawing from, that's how we came up with that part of the name. So integrative therapeutic trauma care. So there's person-centered therapy there, there's attachment theory, there's narrative
oh, you're
therapy,
frozen
there's
again.
emotions theory. So we're kind of drawing from these different schools of thought to create something which we have learned, we have experience, we have used them in our own healing journey, kind of putting that all together to create a framework which we've used, which we've had experience in, and we've had good results in, and kind of taking that and making it accessible. So that's basically what the PLIT-TC Initiative is. And Vicki and I have, created this together, and we've created our first signature program for this initiative, which is called Finally Free. we came up with this name. We wanted to kind of, be free of a lot of the things that really were just, keeping us bound, kept us bound to our past, to the ways that we were raised, the beliefs that we had about ourselves, which were, very false, very, very harmful though. We wanted to come away and break free from all of that. So that's been the journey for us. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, finally free. We've got basically three things that we can kind of highlight as um, what are some of the features or benefits of this program. The first question we want to ask is like, why did we create it? The second thing we'll touch on is it's a holistic framework. And the last one is it's also a very cost-effective program. So we don't have a lot of time, but we can just kind of, touch on those three things. So the community side of it, the peer support. Vix, I'll let you answer this one.
So I love the peer support model because one of the things that I found with I said, I've been working with a therapist for almost going on 5 years. And it's something other people shared with me as well in their own healing journeys that being part of a community and receiving support is like integral to healing, especially if we're talking about trauma healing, right? And because I think so many of the experiences we had as children were we had big emotions and we were sent away, right? You're not welcome here while you're having those big emotions. Go figure it out by yourself. Right? And so we learned that when I'm having a big feeling, I'm going to be sent away. I'm going to be alone in learning how to process and handle all the stuff by myself. And of course, I don't have the tools. My brain isn't developed for that, right? So I think a lot of our wounding comes from that. And you said trauma, I think it's Gabor Mate that says, right? Trauma isn't the thing that happened to you. It's being alone in what happened to you. And so it's being alone. That's the real damaging part. And so one of the things that I think I learned on my journey was that where you're going to be tested, I think, takes place outside of the 1 or 2 hours that you have with your therapist. I think for the majority of people who are in the traditional kind of model of you see your therapist once a week or you see your counselor once a week, and then stuff happens, you talk about stuff. If stuff comes up, if you're able to pack everything back into your suitcase and go away, that's fine. But stuff will happen in the week now that we're more aware of it because we talked about it in therapy that's going to trigger us. When we're triggered, boom, 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 all those emotions come. And we're back to our child selves of, oh, big emotions. I need help. And some people maybe do have that relationship with their therapist where they can text and say, hey, can I set up an emergency meeting with you tomorrow or something? That's great. For the majority of people, they go, okay, I'm on my, 45 minutes once a week. Okay, I just gotta wait. I gotta wait to get help. Or that feeling of I have to figure this out on my own. I think that's really triggered in these kind of traditional models.
Yeah.
So the peer support for me was super helpful knowing that I could reach out to somebody when I was in that really acute stage of going through big emotions or something happened that triggered me. I needed somebody to talk to. And I think, when we were talking about our own relationship, this is what we ended up doing for each other. It's like, oh, I need somebody to vent to. I need to just get it out and talk about it. And for us, we're not saying that we needed tools or solutions. I just needed somebody to witness what I was going through, right?
Witness, yes. Having a compassionate witness, someone there who's, again, so you're not alone because we were traumatized by being alone, having something happen, and we desperately needed someone to be our container, and there was no one there. So now we have someone to be our container, be like, I'm here for you, talk to me. Your emotions are not too much for me. You are not crazy. You are normal, you're natural, this is human, and I'm here with you through it. Yeah.
So that I feel is the real strength of this peer support model that we have. That it may not be us, it may be somebody else. But like I said, once we're learning that the therapist or the person who is listening doesn't have to come in and fix. We're just there to listen and learning those active listening skills and the empathic presence. That's all we need to be for somebody else.
Yeah.
But by allowing somebody else to have that with us, that is where so much of the healing is done. We're talking about disconfirming experiences, rewiring our brain of when I'm in these big emotions, I'm not alone. I have somebody to go to listen to me, to hear me, to reflect back to me what's going on, right? And sometimes that's enough. That's all we needed as kids. And so really that's all we need as adults. And that's something that I feel this peer support model really offers. And yeah, it's just so amazing. I love it.
Yes, yes. And if we had had that kind of and on our the beginning of our healing journey, it would have helped. It would have supported a lot. Not that you can't grow or heal on your own, and you find ways, but I mean, to have that, that's incredible. That's an amazing, like you were saying, the resource, having that resource of just having someone there to listen, to be an empathic witness. Yeah, that's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so that's the first, you could say, one of the features as well as one of the benefits of our program. And the next one is the holistic framework. We talked a little bit about this before, but it's kind of taking the different modalities like techniques or tools or exercises from different modalities, like we said, the emotions therapy, PCT, person-centered therapy, Allender theory, attachment theory, and kind of creating a cohesive framework and understanding that if we kind of use some of these exercises and skills in a structured way, we can work towards certain outcomes for ourselves. So, part of that is, like you said, like understanding for narrative therapy is that we have a story. We each have a story. And understanding that knowing our story and exploring it and understanding it is really key to healing. Many of us, we say, oh, but that just happened. It was just a thing. We kind of, disregard our experiences. But understanding that the way that our brain has been formed and wired is based on two things. The first thing is genetics. The second thing is our relationships. And relationships have an even bigger impact on how our brain is formed than our genetics. So that's nurture versus nature, right? That's one of the new things that maybe not so new, but in the beginning, it was all thought, oh, we're born the way we are. But now we know epigenetics, genes can switch on, they can switch off based on the life experiences, based on how we were raised, based on if we had access to certain opportunities or things in our environment. So knowing that our relationships are so important in understanding who we came to be, who we are, and how we are in this world. And then also knowing that our earliest relationships, our earliest formative interactions play a more key role in our brain development than our later ones. So that's from years 0 to 3 years old, or if you're extending it a bit more from 0 to 5 or 0 to 7. So understanding that how we connected to our mothers or fathers or primary caregivers as babies and young children has such a huge role to play in how our brains were formed and how we have come to be than almost anything else in life. So that is essentially our story. If we're looking at story, one way of understanding it is how our brains are formed. So if someone says, "Oh, I don't really have a story to tell," it doesn't really make sense because we all have come to be a certain way. So understanding how I've come to be a certain way and why, and how did I come to, interact with you or with people in my circle in a certain way that didn't just happen, by itself. There was something that caused that. So understanding that our stories matter. We each have a story and healing from the different wounds that we have carried with us, that's based on us understanding our story. So that's narrative therapy. But then, like you said, when we start to understand our story, we have these memories. And then those memories are going to start to trigger certain sensations in our body and emotions. And if we haven't learned how to deal with those, we're going to be like, no, this is not for me. There's no point in bringing it up because we're scared. We don't know how to handle or manage those things. So that's where the emotions education, understanding our core emotions, understanding how that feels in our body. And so once we understand about our emotions, how to manage them, how to work with them, and also understanding that we don't need to be fearful or ashamed of them. Once we've managed that bit, then we can go back to our story. Then we can bring those two together and then be like, okay, how do I go on this, healing journey now? How do I work with my story? How do I work with my emotions to understand myself better and to slowly start healing from those childhood wounds? So that is the holistic framework that we've kind of taken and put together based on our own experiences, what has worked for us, what hasn't worked for us, what we would do more of. It's kind of like seeing ourselves as a more holistic beings instead of just from one angle. One angle is great and that's fine, but for us, what we've learned is kind of taking a step back and understanding that we are multifaceted. And the more solutions and answers we can bring to the table, answer those different aspects and parts of ourselves, the more resource we're going to be, the more progressive we are going to be in our healing journey, if that makes any sense. So that's kind of the holistic framework. Yeah. And the last bit is the cost effectiveness of this program. So I'll let you handle this one, Vix, and throw in some of my thoughts.
Um, so from what I understand is that, I have invested. I say invested because it is an investment. Some people say cost, but for me, it's an investment because literally like these are giving me tools that I can take with me for the rest of my life. It's helping my quality of life improve. It's helping my quality of relationships improve. So it is an investment. And I've invested a lot of not just money, but also time, right? Time, energy. We're talking about,
Mm,
feeling drained doing all this work, right? And I think what we have learned, we've taken various courses ourselves and we've taken, I've been working with my therapist and just taking all of the things that we've learned and I guess have been given and experienced ourselves, bringing it all together and creating this program at a fraction of the cost of what we spent on it, but also taking the parts that felt really true to our own healing journey as trauma survivors, right? Some parts are great, talking more about mindset or talking more about business side of things and entrepreneurial skills, but
mm,
this is the as far as the core healing work of the trauma that we've lived through, integrating all of that and putting it into this program, doing it at a fraction of the cost that we paid for it ourselves. But also we talked about sharing the burden, I would say. I don't know, because some people do see cost as a burden. It's something that not everyone has access to.
mm,
I think that's one of the big arguments against therapy, that not everyone can afford it. Not everyone can spend hundreds of dollars a month on their mental health and they're trying to put food on the table, right?
right.
So, but you said everybody deserves it. And probably the people who have the least amount of resources to put towards their mental health need it the most, right? So coming up with this this model of peer led, but also peer shared. So the burden isn't put on just one person. It's
Mm,
not put on you have more financial resources, so you get more attention, right? Because that's unfair and unequal. So we wanted to be able to present this to people in a cost effective way. And where we share the burden of the cost, but in doing so, we're also sharing the responsibility to help each other grow.
right,
So
right.
as far as like that's kind of what I understand it as.
I think you put it so eloquently and so beautifully. I love that. Peer shared. It's not just peer led, but it's peer shared. And there's something that's so powerful about sharing not only the cost or the burden, but also sharing yourself, and letting others also have access to your experiences, what you've learned, because no, that is so unique to who you are, right? And the
And
fact
it's
that
valuable as well. Yeah.
yes, yeah. So this is actually also, I mean, the more we talk about it, I can really see, wow, this is incredible what we're creating. It's also a platform to share your own healing, not hurling journey, healing journey with others in a way that maybe you've never been able to before. You wouldn't, not everyone's going to write a book. Not everyone's going to make a course. Not everyone's going to be a coach and, stand on stage and be the next Tony Robbins or Mel Robbins, but by having this area, this platform and, space where people can bring who they are and what they've learned to others. There's something that's so, well, valuable in that, and also so just so beautiful
Community.
and so empowering. So, yeah, that's just another bit of, the cost effectiveness of the program is sharing, being able to share with others. Yeah. Yeah, I think that it kind of covers it, the community side, peer-led, the holistic framework, and then the cost effectiveness of the program. And that's just a little bit of insight into the PLIT-TC Initiative and our first program, which is finally free. So yeah, we're really happy to have shared these bits with you today. And what we'd like to do, if you have any more questions or any other concerns or maybe hesitancies that are kind of like maybe holding you back a little bit, or you don't really know what's right, please do book a, what do we call it? Like an enrollment call
Enrollment
with
call.
us. We will link it in the Sondervous podcast. And then if you head on over to our Instagram account, which is PLIT-TC Initiative, so that's PLIT_TC_Initiative, we'll have all the details over there as well. So if you book this enrollment call with us, any questions, any concerns that you have, anything you need to know more about the program, if it's a good fit for you, if you'll get the kind of benefit and outcomes that you want, we can answer all of those on the call. Yeah. So yeah. Any other final thoughts, Fix, before we close today?
Just that we're excited to, get started on this, and this, we're really here to serve. We
Mm,
understand that it is, we take this responsibility seriously. It's not just something that we're like, hey, we came up with this on the top of our head, and this is something we've been kind of working towards for the last 2, 3 years, I think.
yeah.
And that we take this, responsibility really seriously. We understand that people have a lot, and it's heavy, and it seems like it's getting heavier the longer you carry it, right? And so this is finally a place that we hope that you can come and just kind of unload. And like I said, if you have any questions, then the enrollment call is going to be in the link for you to click on. And yeah, just come, just let us have a conversation with you, and we'll see if this is the right next step for you.
Yes, come as you are. And we really hope that you'll be excited to join our PLIT community. And yeah, we'll see you there. All right. Bye, guys. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us today. All right. Bye.